What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to Fudge Muppet. We all know that playing as a Dragonborn is one of the main things that really sets Skyrim apart from the other Elder Scrolls games. It led to a fantasy experience that allowed for a very immersive power trip, giving you the blood and soul of a dragon, with the ability to master their tongue as a weapon for good or evil. Whether this meant you'd call down storms on the battlefield of the Civil War, or just scream Fusro Dar at bandits after perfectly positioning them on the edge of a cliff, it was all a ton of fun and really made you feel like you were a cut above the rest. And yes, while I believe it's extremely rewarding to play an Elder Scrolls game as someone who isn't given godly powers almost straight away, I can't deny just how cool of an experience it was. Now the Thum, which is a kind of magic which harnesses the dragon language to unleash immense power through shouts, is actually not something that was only restricted to the Dragonborns. For example, many ancient Nords could use the dragon tongue to shout as well, although the art has very much been lost to time, only really being taught by the Greybeards to a select few. Either way, because most people look at dragon shouts and just assume the user is a Dragonborn, it has led some individuals to believe certain characters throughout history, or even in Skyrim in the case of Ulfric, are Dragonborns. We know this is not necessarily the case. For example, Ulfric is definitely not a Dragonborn, nor are the Greybeards who taught him to use the voice, which he later used for his own personal gain. That said, there are others who might be Dragonborn in the Elder Scrolls lore, people that aren't explicitly named Dragonborn and others who are, but people still debate it. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through the three most significant unconfirmed Dragonborns, and by unconfirmed, I mean that some people will argue they are Dragonborn and others will argue they aren't. I'll weigh in too to explain what I think in each case. Also, special shout out to Zarek Zahacaron for giving me some of his thoughts on Twitter. Well, let's kick things off with a very important man who lived in the lands of Skyrim, Wulfharth. You might have heard of this fellow through Jarl Balgruuf, who proclaims, Wulfharth was Dragonborn, Talos too, the founder of the Empire back in the good old days. That's one thing to note as well, there's a lot of Dragonborns when you look through the timeline of various emperors, but that's all confirmed. Wulfharth, however, is an area where some people aren't sure, but who is Wulfharth anyway? Well, even that question can get extremely complicated, so much so that it would need an entire video dedicated to it. That said, here's a solid outline of what is accepted by the overwhelming majority as what we know. Born in Atmora originally, Wulfharth became the High King of Skyrim all the way back in the First Era, during ancient times. He was given the position after the death of High King Hoag Mercula, who was slain in the Battle of Glenumbra Moors, which was a conflict that saw the Elysian Order drastically crushed from their heights of power. Wulfharth was chosen to be the new ruler via the Pact of Chieftains in the 500th year of the First Era. And here's the first interesting thing you'll learn about him. His power with the Thum was so strong that he couldn't verbally swear himself into office, forcing scribes to actually draw up his oaths, for if he were to announce them with the pride of a true Nord, it would cause great damage. These same scribes then wrote down the first new law of his reign, to reinstate the true traditional Nordic pantheon and to begin the annihilation of Elysian influence, destroying the temples and forcing the priests of this order away. Many priests were burnt at the stake, joining the ash clouds which would have been arising from their faction halls at the same time. Wulfharth also fought plenty against the orcs, supposedly shouting their chieftain into hell. The legends regarding Wulfharth are mostly outlined in the book called The 5 Songs of King Wulfharth, which tell the tales of his life. What I'll now reveal to you, which is even more confusing, is the fact that Wulfharth has died and been reborn multiple times, but let's stick to his first life for the main part. So he's made High King of Skyrim, he's extremely traditional and reinstates the true Nordic pantheon, largely abolishing Elysian influence in the process. He then goes and battles against the Eastern Orcs, destroying their chief. In addition to this, Wulfharth is credited with driving out the Dureni clan from Skyrim. The Dureni were a bunch of Outma merchants, aristocrats, who became very powerful long ago in the First Era, conquering High Rock, parts of Hammerfell, and some parts of Skyrim. Anyway, Wulfharth is also credited with the rebuilding of the 418th step of High Hrothgar, which a dragon had once damaged, although that's not overly impressive. What is impressive is the fact that alongside his great Nordic army, he swallowed a thundercloud to keep them from catching cold, and as a result, the Nords called him the Breath of Kine. He was also called Shor's Tongue and Izmir, Dragon of the North. for both his zealotry but also his great power with the thumb. This covers the first 2 songs out of 5, but the third one is where things get weird and Wulfharth dies for the first time. It also gives more evidence that he is Dragonborn. I mean, we know the thumb was hard to master, but this guy is a pro with a Dragonborn-like affinity for the ability. But let me prove that more with this next event. So Wulfharth is going around driving various non-Nordic influences out of Skyrim and waging war against orcs, but along comes the influence of an enemy god named Orke. Orke is a Nordic god of mortality who was known to be an antagonist towards them, trying to ruin them on many occasions. He is considered the Nordic variant of the Daedric prince Malakath, which is particularly interesting because Malakath is the patron god of orcs. You know, the race that Wulfharth was obliterating. Orke is considered by some to be closer to Arche, though. You know, Orke and Arche, I guess they kind of sound the same. Anyways, Atmorans believed they used to live as long as elves, until Orke tricked them into a bargain which limited their lifespan. So, quite fittingly, what Orke does, who is also known by a weird name, Old Knocker, is summon a ghost of none other than Alduin the World-Eater. Alduin comes and literally eats the years that Nords have to live, cutting it down to only 6 years, making all of the Nords into children. It's really strange stuff. So Wulfharth, now in the form of a boy, calls out to Shor, begging him to save the Nords. Shor responds and comes to fight Alduin on the spirit plane, redirecting the curse onto the orcs. Now, here's a really weird part. Wulfharth watched Shor battle against Alduin, and in the process, he actually taught himself a new dragon shout. He used this dragon shout to return his people back to their true age, their real form. However, this act caused Wulfharth to die, as the Nords aged rapidly back to normal, and he shook too many years out of himself, growing older than the Greybeards at great speeds and then perishing. However, he is only dead until he's reborn in the 4th song. The dwarves and the Chimer, that is the ancestor race of Dark Elves, had began fighting again to the east, and the Nords saw this as the perfect opportunity to capitalize on in order to reclaim land there. Ultimately, this leads to the Battle of Red Mountain, in which there are multiple different recordings of what happened, but here's the one involving Wulfharth. So the Nords had planned out an attack on the east, but eventually called it quits as they knew they wouldn't succeed without a strong king. In comes Dagoth promising he knew where the heart of Shor was, supposedly with the dwarves and Chimer of the Eastern Kingdoms. What a convenient place for it to be. They were suspicious of Dagoth at first, but he said that betrayal was common among his kind, and had been since the beginning of time. A group of Nords who could use the power of the voice then sung Shor's ghost into the world yet again, and he gathered an army, sucking in the ashes of the dead King Wulfharth and bringing him back to life. He would be the general, alongside Dagoth. So with all the sons of Skyrim, they march east into Morrowind, called Resdayn at the time. From here, there's a ton of different ways the ending goes down, but essentially what you need to know is that Wulfharth dies in battle. Whether or not he killed the Dwemer King Dumak or was killed by Vivek is debated by many, but the most important thing to know is that almost all of the accounts say he dies. He then is resurrected and disappears throughout other points in history, during the Second Akaviri invasion and during the Wars of Tiber Septim. But the question is Wulfharth a Dragonborn? Well, here's what we know. We know he was so powerful at shouts that he couldn't even say his oaths when becoming High King. They had to be written down by scribes instead. It is said he had great powers, supposedly being able to swallow a thundercloud. You may think this is just a myth, but then it becomes more believable when you hear that not only was he able to use the thumb so well, but he also didn't need much practice. He literally taught himself a dragon shout just by watching the ghost of Alduin fight with Shor, and then proceeded to use it to restore the proper age of the Nords. That screams Dragonborn level power to me. Remember, Balgruuf also says Wulfharth was Dragonborn. But even if Balgruuf was wrong, we also know that Wulfharth was also called Ysmir, Dragon of the North. Do you know who else was called this? Tiber Septim, a full-on Dragonborn. And do you know who else? The Dragonborn from Skyrim. The Greybeards literally refer to the last Dragonborn as Ysmir, Dragon of the North. If the only people who have been referred to as this are Dragonborn, I would definitely think that in addition to the rest of the evidence, Wulfharth is definitely a Dragonborn. Again, I might be wrong, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below, because I've seen quite the debates occur around it. So that's the first one, Ysmir Wulfharth. I really think he's a Dragonborn from, but I can't be 100% sure. The next unconfirmed Dragonborn on this list, or a character people theorize is Dragonborn but can't really be sure, is actually the Nerevarine. Now this one doesn't take nearly as long to explain, as we don't really need to go through who the Nerevarine is and what he did in super detail. Here's the simpler version, also Morrowind spoilers. The Nerevarine is a reincarnation of Indoral Nerevar, who was a Chima hero who lived during the First Era. Like Wulfarth, Nerevar is said to have died in the Battle of Red Mountain, and yet again there's various accounts contradicting this. Indoral Nerevar was the champion of Azura and the champion of the unified Chima and Dwemer. He played a massive role in shaping the history of Morrowind and ensuring the prosperity of the Chima during his time, and therefore the Dunmer of modern times. So this Nerevar fellow was prophesied to come back, reincarnated on a mission to reinstate the worship of the Daedra, Azura, Boethia, and Mephala. He was foretold to destroy Dagoth-Ur and cast down the Tribunal, the Betrayers. The Tribunal, including Vivek, Sir Thassil, and Almalexia, had figured out how to use the tools of Kagrenac and the Heart of Lorkhan to turn themselves into living gods. They stole its divine essence for themselves and ruled the Chima people of Morrowind. Sir Thassil even said that they didn't need the Daedra anymore. The Tribunal were the new gods now. Azura cursed them for this. She turned the Chima into Dunmer and proclaimed that Nerevar would come back, reincarnated to right wrongs in Nirn. This was brushed off until it literally happens in Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, where you play as the reincarnation, as the Nerevarine. I don't want to spoil too much of the details, but your actions essentially do fulfill the prophecy. So we all know who the Nerevarine is, and I can cover more in a future video, but why do people think the Nerevarine is Dragonborn? It's not like you use dragon shouts in Morrowind or even absorb dragon souls, so you'd never really know anyway. Well, it all comes from one text, written by Gilvas Borello, called the Lost Prophecy. He is also the author of Kagrenac's Tools. Gilvas Borello is a Dunmer priest, the de facto leader of the dissident priests, if you will, who are a secretive cult of Tribunal Temple members who question the Tribunal's elevation to godhood. The Lost Prophecies is basically the written version of Azura's Nerevarine prophecy, and reads as follows. From 7th sign of 11th generation, neither hound nor guar, nor seed nor harrow, but dragonborn and far-star marked, outlander incarnate beneath Red Mountain, blessed guest counters 7 curses, star-blessed hands wields thrice cursed blade, to reap the harvest of the unmourned house. All of this sounds mystic, but it can all be explained as the events involving the Nerevarine. For example, star-blessed very likely refers to being chosen by Azura, and so forth. Anyways, the line people get stuck on is the part where it reads, but dragonborn and far-star marked. I've seen so many people read this and assume it means the Nerevarine is a dragonborn. However, do note that it puts a dash between the word dragon and born, which I find odd, but the main point is that it actually just meant born of empire, aka an outlander. In theory, it could have dual meaning, but there's really not a lot of evidence here to suggest the Nerevarine is dragonborn. It literally just says dragon-born on the prophecy, and according to the explanatory notes, it says it in the context of being an outlander. This is all I think it means, but again, I technically can't say for sure that the Nerevarine isn't a dragonborn. I'd love to hear if you guys have any really deep theories in the comments, but I'm willing to say Wulfarth yes, Nerevarine no. That said, I do like the fact that in Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, you could overhear that the Nerevarine had left on an expedition to Akavir, you know, where dragons are said to come from. Maybe work that into one of your theories, but that all said, I think we can all move on from the Nerevarine to the final unconfirmed Dragonborn, Mankar Camoran. To me, Mankar Camoran is a confirmed Dragonborn, but again, people love to debate it, and make multiple theories that suggest otherwise. Now, we actually made a video on Mankar Camoran and whether he's a Dragonborn or not about 1.5 years ago, so if you've watched that, then I'll guess I'll ruin the retention time of this video by saying that you've pretty much heard what I'm about to say. That said, a lot of you wouldn't have seen that video, so who is Mankar Camoran, and why am I so sure that he is a Dragonborn? Well, Mankar Camoran is the leader of the Mythic Dawn, the cult that helps Mehrunes Dagon in his attempt to take over Tamriel during the Oblivion crisis. He's a highly powerful mage, so powerful and cunning that he was able to forge his own pocket realm of Oblivion, his own paradise called Gaia Alata. He's also guessed to be the illegitimate son of the Camoran usurper, who was also an extremely overpowered mage, but I don't have time to get into all the crazy theories of how he was apparently once a Bosmer and changed his race and all of that stuff. What I will say is this: in Oblivion, there's a moment in the quest questline where Mankar Cameron decides to wear the Amulet of Kings, the pendant traditionally worn by the ruling Emperor of Cyrodiil, who can wear it due to their dragon blood. You see, these emperors, like the Septums for example, are dragonborn. That said, we can assume dragonborn status is bestowed upon birth, so you obviously don't have to be part of the lineage of the emperors, nor do you have to be a certain race. Any race in Skyrim can play as dragonborn, so Mankar Cameron wears the Amulet of Kings. Some will joke that he just connected a piece of string between the two ends of the necklace and pretended to wear it, but to me wearing this pendant is enough proof. However, I still wouldn't want to settle there for the video. You see, there's more evidence when we take a look at Mankar Cameron's commentaries, a collection of 4 books he wrote. In book 1, Mankar Cameron wrote a passage that reveals the following quote: "Offering myself to that daybreak allowed the girdle of grace to contain me. When my voice returned, it spoke with another tongue. After 3 nights, I could speak fire." So what language that could be referred to as another tongue have we seen in the Elder Scrolls? Another tongue that allows you to literally speak fire. To me, this sounds like the learning of dragon shouts, specifically the fire breath shout seen performed by dragons themselves and by the last dragonborn of Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The fact that it took him only 3 days to learn it also says a lot, as we know dragonborns can learn to use shouts much faster than mere mortals who commit their lives to the practice. A quote from Ulfric rings true here: "You're dragonborn. The rules don't apply to you. You can shout the way dragons do, without training, through inborn instinct." Now maybe 3 days was actually a lot of time for Mankar Cameron to learn something, seeing as he is so smart and magically gifted, and maybe this was just a powerful gift he gained from reading the Mysterium Xarxes, a tome of evil power written by Mehrunes Dagon. Then again, with the other piece of evidence, to me it just adds up that he really is a dragonborn. He learnt to speak another tongue rapidly, which allowed him to literally spit fire without intense training, and he can actually wear the Amulet of Kings, which we know can only be worn by one of dragon blood, a dragonborn. So in summary, I believe Mankar Cameron, yes. Wulfarth, yes. But Nerevarine, no. Feel free to disagree with me and offer alternatives in the comments. I called them unconfirmed for a reason, as I see it debated so frequently, and I just can't help but love all the theories out there. I really do believe that Mankar and Wulfarth are dragonborns though, and I think that makes them so much cooler. Thanks so much for watching the video, guys. I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope you really enjoyed it. My name's Michael, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time with some more Skyrim and Elder Scrolls goodness.